Hi kids, it's Mrs. Fravel. How are you today? Good. Me too. I'm fine. Hey, today I want to talk a little bit more about marine ecology, specifically how interactions between organisms happen. No organism lives in a vacuum, right? We talked about how abiotic factors in an environment can influence biotic factors. Today we're going to talk about how the biotic factors work together and sometimes don't work together in an ecosystem. Okay. All right. So today you're going to learn how organisms and their populations, how they interact with each other and between each other. And then also be sure to keep in mind that interactions of these kinds, they're what keep ecosystems of all kinds in balance in the ocean and in terrestrial ecosystems as well. Organisms keep each other in check in terms of population size and also drive adaptation and evolution and also keep the abiotic factors in check as well. So all of these things work together in an ecosystem to make it run. Okay, so in biology, we talked about these different ecological interactions within organisms' communities. Okay, so just as a review, it should be review. Competition is when two or more organisms rely on the same environmental resource. And what that means is we could have two different species, or we could have two or more individuals within a species that use the same food resource or the same shelter resource or the same space resource. Okay, so when they do that, they compete for it. And the most well adapted of that organisms will usually win and continue to survive, right? Okay. Predation, that is the behavior of one animal feeding on another. The ocean relies a lot on predation for its ecological balance and for food sources for organisms. And then we have three different kinds of symbioses. Symbiosis is the close relationship of non-related organisms or dissimilar organisms. And that happens in these three ways. Mutualism is when there is a relationship that benefits two organisms mutually. Okay, they both benefit. Commensalism is a symbiotic relationship where one of them benefits, but the other one, it doesn't benefit them, it doesn't harm them. They can do without it. They're like the generous one in the relationship, right? And then parasitism, that is when there is a symbiotic relationship where one organism's benefited and one is harmed. Okay, so remember, symbioses are not always good for both partners, and they're not always just two. We can have symbioses that work with multiple species as well. Okay, all right, let's go through these a little more in detail. So competition, this is what drives the world for real. Nature is a competitive, brutal place, and if you can't compete, you don't make it. I mean, the game Survivor's nothing when you're talking about the actual real world of the wild. Competition occurs when any two different species or two individuals compete for the same limited or limiting resource that they require for survival. Okay? That happens, again, between members of one species, so that's called intra-specific competition. And if you're not taking notes, I always forget to mention at the top, you should be taking notes. So if you need to go grab your notebook, pause me right now, go get your paint notebook so you can start this over. Okay, are you back? Okay, so intra-specific competition is when animals within the same species or animals of the same species compete with each other to get a limited resource. So this picture shows that type of competition. So these are sharks of the same species. I believe they are pelagic blacktip sharks. Don't quote me on that. And they are competing with each other to eat fish in this bait ball. That's what we call that. A bait ball is just any small species of fish that school in a cloud, school in a tight ball. Those are things like herring, and anchovies, enchilada, things like that, okay? And then, so all of these sharks are competing with each other to eat as many as they can and survive, right? Then we have inter-specific competition. So this is when members of different species are competing with each other for the same resource. And that happens with bait balls as well. So in this picture, we have this beautiful swordfish competing with this beautiful sea lion. Yes, sea lion, to eat the bait ball. And sometimes they work together, but it still comes down to who can eat more to survive, right? So make sure you know the difference between those two. And here's a little pro tip. The word part intra always means within. Inter means between, okay? All right, so some other examples of competition for food is kind of directed at krill. So krill kind of do the same thing as those bait fish, where they accumulate in large groups where they are mating and swimming together. And they are the main food source for a lot of animals in the ocean. And with competition, sometimes if a bigger animal enters the competitive arena, the rest of them will scatter. And if you watch these videos, and I will link these below my video on Canvas. So this one shows a bait ball being devoured by different kinds of mid-level predators like tuna fish and their competitors. And then this second video is like all kinds of different animals, from birds, sharks, sea lions, and whales, all feeding on a bait ball and all competing with each other to get the most food. And then this video right here, please watch it. You won't be able to erase it from your retinas when you see what a hermit crab looks like without its shell. So hermit crabs are intra-specific competitors because they compete for shelter. Hermit crabs don't make their shells. So those shells that they wear around are made by snails, and then the hermits take over them when the snails die, and they fit their little abdomen inside of the shell of the right size. And they have to, as they grow, find new homes. They have to find a new snail shell to move into, and sometimes they do that in a big group together, and they compete for the best shell. So watch that video, it's hilarious. And then this is just a very lovely video of blue whales eating krill and competing intra-specifically. Okay, so watch all those videos. Okay. There are different ways, of course, of acquiring food when you are an animal. There are 3 types I want you to know about. So filter feeders are animals that simply filter the water through their body and remove the organic material to eat, and then they expel the water. Okay, so there's 2 different kinds of animals in general that do that. So sessile animals, the word sessile means not moving. These are animals attached to the benthic part of the ocean. You remember what benthic means? That was on the last test. So sessile benthic animals, they hold still and the water flows through them, and whatever is in the currents, they will ingest and eat if it's edible. Okay, these are animals like sponges and corals. And then mobile means you can move, right? So mobile animals swim through the water, usually with their mouths open, and they filter the food particles, anything from microscopic plankton up to krill and small fish, in through their mouths, and then they expel the water, swallow everything else down. So this is stuff like the giant baleen whales and whale sharks. There are also a lot of smaller fish, like I believe mackerel are mobile filter feeders as well. They're a medium-sized non-predatory fish. Okay. Herbivores in the ocean, we know herbivores on land are stuff like cows and horses and sheep, right? They graze. We have grazers in the ocean as well. Foraging grazers in the ocean will munch on algae on rocks, and macroalgae like kelp, which we'll talk about, I believe, in 2 weeks. Macroalgae, and also microalgae, they'll just munch on them. Okay? These are animals like green sea turtles. They're the only herbivorous turtle species. Manatees munch on vascular grasses in shallow seas. Parrotfish, these are fish that munch on corals, and they ingest both the coral algae, but coral bodies and algae. And then, of course, we have snails. They scrape the algae off rocks with their little tongue. We'll talk about them. And sea urchins, which are amazing grazers. These little echinoderms eat so much, and I've got a little GIF to show you. GIF, whichever, in a minute. Then, of course, predators. We have a lot of predators in the ocean, like I said. There's not a lot of big plant life in the ocean in terms of like sitting down and munching on grass. Okay, that happens in some places, but not others. I think the large majority of animals are more predatory or carnivorous and filter feeders. So predators in the ocean run from tiny things up to the big megafauna that we all think of as, apex predators. But we get stuff like starfish. So starfish are predators. They will crawl themselves on top of clams and mussels and snails, and they'll just throw their stomachs out of their own bodies and just digest them. It's pretty brutal. Butterfly fish are fish with really thin mouths and noses, and they pluck at coral bodies and swallow them. Open water fish and cephalopods are opportunistic eaters. They'll just eat whatever fishes are around them. And seabirds, these guys all hunt and eat fish, either in the open water or on the shoreline. Baleen whales filter feeds fish and krill. Technically, that's predatory. They are still a filter feeder, but they're eating another animal. Okay? And then, of course, we have those awesome, awesome, big apex predators like orca, big sharks, dolphins, otters, and polar bears. And here's some examples, some visuals of those that I just showed you. So this is a demonstration of how sessile filter feeders eat. They pull, these are sponges. Sponges are animals, we'll talk about them. They pull water through their bodies and they filter out whatever organic molecules and small plankton are in the water, and then they ingest that and absorb it through their body cavity. This is a green sea turtle munching on some grass. Yes, munching is a technical term. Munch, nom, nom. Totally technical terms for ecology. These are, well, I'll get out of the way there. These are sea otters eating a crab. Also, that's technically munching. The ultimate muncher is the sea anemones. So they have these wonderful six-sided sharp teeth inside their mouth, and they eat kelp. They keep kelp forests in check, but there's a problem with urchins in that they can destroy underwater kelp forests, and we'll talk about them when we talk about the kelp ecosystem. These are those butterfly fish I mentioned. They just go through with their little mouths and they suck out coral bodies. And of course, big predatory fish. This is a sailfin swordfish, okay, eating fish. Okay, and then we also have those symbioses that I mentioned, right? We have mutualism, both species benefit. One example is pistol shrimp and goby. There's another video. There's kind of a ton of videos, but they're awesome. There's a video about the pistol shrimp and goby that I will also link. And this is a picture of a pistol shrimp and goby. These are my pets. I have them in my reef tank in the other room. His name is Scout and Dill. I name my fish and shrimp. Okay. We have commensalism, where one species benefits and there's no other apparent effect on the other animal, like sharks and remoras. There's some debate. Some remoras can be a little beneficial or a little harmful, but for the most part, big sharks don't really care about remoras. And remoras are weird fish. They have a suction cup where their dorsal fin should be. So there's another video for you to watch. And then, of course, parasitism. This really is a limiting factor in ecological terms. Parasites can keep populations in check by destroying or killing individuals of another species. So we have tapeworms. We also have tapeworms in mammalian marine mammals, essentially. Isopods, if you don't know what an isopod is, do you remember the little roly-poly pill bugs you used to play with as a kid? There are giant ones of those in the ocean, and there are also small ones of those in the ocean of different species. They attach to fish gills and fish tongues. They eat the fish's gills, they eat the fish's tongues, and then ingest what the fish is supposed to eat, okay? And also suck their blood. Ugh, kind of brutal, right? But important. Parasites get a really bad rap, but they're important. They keep populations in check and keep that balance going, okay? All right, that's it. Your assignments are posted on Canvas. You have a symbiosis worksheet, and then you have a symbiosis research. If you have any questions about those, we will have live class, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, have a great day. Bye.